Hi, it's day 8 of the quarantine for the coronavirus. And wanted to do another video. This time it's about the 10 records I'd pack with me if I had to leave in a jiffy. It's not like a best record thing, but the ones I like at the moment. So it's going to be very tough because I've got quite a collection. So these are 10 records, and I'm going to start off with this thing right here, the Beatles. Oh, by the way, I'm wearing my Pau Gasol Chicago Bulls jersey, the authentic one. And Revolver actually happens to be not only my favorite Beatles album, but one of my favorite albums of all time. Um, when this came out, I was like a toddler or something like that, so I wasn't fully aware of them. I think the first time I became aware of them was with Yellow Submarine because of the cartoon that really wasn't for kids. So, and then I saw the artwork for Revolver, and as a kid, I was always an artist. I loved to draw. So this attracted me, but I only fully appreciated Revolver later on in my adult life, and it's got a lot of great songs. Taxman, Eleanor Rigby, I'm Only Sleeping, Here, There, and Everywhere. One of my favorite Beatles songs, and the other favorite Beatles song that I like is Got to Get You Into My Life, a really soulful song that Earth, Wind and Fire later on recorded for their own, So this, along with Rubber Soul, are my favorite Beatles albums, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and Abbey Road. But this one stands out, and I bring this record with me. And then there's Steve McQueen from Prefab Sprout. I was a freshman in college when this album came out, and the song Appetite had hit the American Top 40, and I was amazed at what a beautiful song it was. It was a song about yearning and all that. And it was difficult because I was in the pre-internet days, so all I had to get my information about Prefab Sprouts from the radio or magazines like Rolling Stone, New Musical Express, if I could actually find it. But thankfully I had a rich classmate who got NME among others. So I got into Prefab Sprout, and I asked a friend of mine, Noel Diaz, who used to actually buy this record. She was supposed to be my classmate in Ateneo during my freshman year in college, but she enrolled for a year at the University of Michigan, and she got this along with Sting, I Dream of the Blue Turtles, as well as the Style Council Live, their third album, technically not an album because it was a live one. So she got these 3 records for me, and this is absolutely amazing. Steve McQueen was the name of their album in the UK. In the US, the estate of Steve McQueen did not approve of his name, the actor's name, being used as the album title, so they changed it to Two Wheels Good. But my introduction to this band was great songwriting. Paddy McAllen is one of the most gifted songwriters of this generation, but it just wasn't him. He had a great band. Martin McAllen, his brother, Wendy Smith, and drummer Neil Conti. It's an excellent 4-piece unit. And why is this one of my favorites? Or one of those records that pack with me, because I thought at that point that this is probably the most heartbreaking album. It's a melancholic album, and freshman year, teenage angst, all these things, and heartbreak, all those things. I got into this song, Appetite, and then When Love Breaks Down also spoke about the same thing, so there, and it's got a lot of other beautiful tracks, Bonnie, Horsing Around, Desire As, When the Angels, just a lot of beautiful songs from this album, and I became a fan of this band for life. Every album of theirs I managed to secure, and well, you're looking actually at the Legacy vinyl. I actually got this during my return to vinyl collecting in 2016. I do have the original press, and it's in another crate elsewhere. I don't play it that much, but this one I do. So, it's one of my favorites. And look at that cover. Absolutely amazing cover, So, the third album I'd pack with me is Bob Marley and the Wailers' Exodus. I first heard Bob Marley with the song, with their version of I Shot the Sheriff. But this was the first album that I actually listened to, Exodus, and I want to thank Dominic Gamboa for that, because I remember a friend of mine, Pop-Up Sumulong, brought me to his place in Provident Village one time, and he had this on his turntable. And that was my introduction to real reggae. There were other records at the time that he was reggae and punk records that he had, but Exodus was just something. And I remember we were all lying down on the floor listening to this. They were having some smokes. No, I wasn't, because I never smoked all my life. But this album really got me. It's memorable because not only is it the first reggae album I listened to, but the album was just a stunning piece of work. I'm not sure if it was Time or Rolling Stone that named this the best album of the 20th century, and you'll always find this on the best of list. And that's not because that's not the reason why I consider this my favorite. It's just some really beautiful tunes, Natural Mystic, So Much to Say, Exodus, Jamming, Waiting in Vain, Three Little Birds and One Love, so it's got a lot of hits in this album. And if you're gonna wonder why it's Legend, why not Legend? Because Legend is the greatest hits album. You're not gonna find any greatest hits albums on this pile of mine, but Exodus is. The fourth album back with me is Death Cab for Cutie's Transatlanticism. I was already into the band when this album came out, but this made me a true fan. I caught them at the Siren Music Festival in Coney Island. They performed in one of the sound stages there. I went there to watch the Ponies, among others, but the one act that I wanted to watch was Death Cab for Cutie, and this album just came out and they performed it in its entirety along with other favorite other hits, And the cool thing, if you've been to Coney Island, is that you're next to the Atlantic Ocean. And when they were performing the title track, Transatlanticism, because the album was just brand new and not everyone knew the songs yet, but everyone wanted to watch them because Death Cab for Cutie had this indie credibility. They were one of the it bands at the time. This was like 2003, 2004, if I'm not mistaken. And it was just so quiet. You could hear the waves, and I can still hear the waves lapping against the shore. And it was such a mournful song. And then, Ben Gibbard is just an amazing songwriter. And when he starts singing "Come On, So Come On," and I think the crowd picked up on it, and then they were singing along. It was packed. I'd say there were 5, 6, 7,000 people in that area alone, and just a beautiful, beautiful performance. And when I got back to Times Square following the show, I went to Virgin Records, where I actually worked to buy a copy of this. So I got the CD initially, and then years later I had to pick up the vinyl version, and I love it to pieces. Next up, August and Everything After by Counting Crows. I was in my alternative phase when this album came out, and it really struck me how this band, Counting Crows, reminded me of Bruce Hornsby and the Range, although Bruce Hornsby and the Range had a more classical, at times jazzy feel to them. But they wrote songs, very deep songs, just like Billy Joel did. And, this band is a very deep band. And I love the songs. I think Rain King and Round Here, Anna Begins, they just really hit me, This is an album that I play at least once a month. I have the CD, I have the record, I even have the cassette version, so that's how much I love this. And, I don't think they put out a better album than this in their career. It's just that, look at that artwork, it's just so gorgeous, And Rain King, it's sort of the post, when Tears for Fears Songs in the Big Chair came out, I used the big chair as sort of like a name for my filing system. But when, at the time when this came out, I the song Rain King really struck me a lot. So I adopted it as an online moniker, the Rain King. So in a lot of the fora that I joined, whether they're music sites or comic book sites or pop culture sites, forums or fora, I used the Rain King as my moniker. So this is an absolutely gorgeous album. Yeah. The next one takes me back to my high school and college days. Font Imperfection from China Crisis. I was a fan of the band already because of their song Wishful Thinking and African in White. I love the live version of African in White that they put on wax when they recorded it at Reading University. I think it's the best version of that song that they've ever recorded. But I was just like an okay fan of China Crisis at the time because this was during the New Wave era and bands were popping up left and right just like mushrooms, and he had a lot of one-hit wonders, although technically they weren't a one-hit wonder. Then this album, after working with Fire and Steel, this album came out, Flaunt the Imperfection, and Walter Becker of Steely Dan produced the album. In fact, the band was so pleased they made him a member of the band, and he's credited as a member of China Crisis for this album. Becker changed their sound forever. This album has a jazzier feel, as evidenced by songs like You Did Cut Me. And it's just really, really beautiful. It changed the band forever. To this day, even if only 2 members of their band are left, they still carry that same vibe that Becker introduced to them. So, and I play this a lot. Probably more than August and Everything After by the Counting Crows. So this is one of my favorites. Feel Something from Movements. This album came out, 2018 if I'm not mistaken. And by emo band Movements. I was fortunate enough to see the band here in Manila, and I got them to sign the record. This album, Feel Something, really makes me feel something. Thematically it's about dealing with loved ones who are battling dementia, Alzheimer's, old age, and all that, loss, depression. And my father has his own health problems right now for the last couple of years, and a lot of what the band sings on this album really appeals to me, and it sings of my feelings about what's going on. So this record really means a lot, and it's just amazing, just an amazing record. The next one on my list is You Forgot It in People by Broken Social Scene. I was working at Virgin Records in Times Square when this album came out. At the time, or first few years of the new millennium, I was in my indie phase. I was picking up a lot of indie bands. It's a hit and miss proposition when you get all these indie bands. And, I got the CD of this, and it had this weird cover, very Smiths-like. And as a result, I picked it up, and I was surprised. To be honest, I wasn't expecting much, but it was just an amazing record. They had 8-9 members in the band, and they were performing some really great songs that weren't of your usual variety. I thought they were deep, like the Shins, and I love the Shins. They had some really amazing songs, and there was something about this band. Broken Social Scene. They just wrote really left of center songs, but I guess that's it about indie bands, like Modest Mouse and all that. But my dog's over here and she wants to play. But anyway, I got this on CD. I got home and I played it, and I was just blown away. I think I played it all night, and the next day, when I got back to work the next day, since I was working the turntables and the CD players that day as a DJ. I played it, and I got a number of people to pick up the CD, and I did get the album later on, and I was fortunate enough to see them when they were on tour to promote this album, and I also saw them in Singapore when they were promoting Forgiveness Rock Record. I got to meet the band, interview them, and get my copy of Forgiveness Rock Record signed. So This is one of my all-time favorites. We're down to our last two records. You Make Us Go from Holiday Flyer, one of those indie bands again. They're from Sacramento. And I reviewed them for an online music site, and I said that they were like an indie version of Everything But the Girl, but that hardly does them justice. You know, they're not. When I think about it now, because I was hard pressed to find other acts like them. Of course, you had Rose Melberg and the Murmurs and all that, but this is just a really beautiful record, in the vein of Steve McQueen by Prefab Sprout or Nouvelle by Club 8. This is such a heartbreaking album. I love the boy-girl harmony between brother and sister tandem, John and Katie Connolly along with Verna Brock. He just wrote some really beautiful songs. Why is this such a big album for me? Because I met this girl who eventually became my girlfriend, and I actually thought that I'd be with her for the rest of my life. And I introduced this band to her, and she was into it. She also got into the band. In fact, she bought the CD as well. And this became like our soundtrack. And it even before became more poignant for me after we broke up. And it's sad, you know, it's sad. And to this day, I kind of miss her. And the songs to this day they're still very powerful. I listen to them a lot, and they evoke a lot of emotion in me. But the hurt, whatever I felt back in those days after the breakup, they're not there. I still feel certain pangs, but it's, you know, I think I moved on from it, but there's still that yearning. And you know, the cool thing about it, after that I became friends with John Conley, and we're Facebook friends though, and I communicate with him once in a while, and I tell him my love for this band. I have all their albums on vinyl as well as in CD, and I never get tired of listening to this record. It's absolutely amazing. The last album I'd pack with me is Slow Dive's latest album, their self-titled fourth album, their comeback album after a long hiatus that everyone thought it was over for this band, and they came back with their strongest effort, their best record ever. And it's an album where Neil does more sing than Rachel, but you know, it still takes you to the stratosphere, to above the clouds and all that. You know, shoegaze music. It's one of my favorite genres, and rock. And Slow Dive, I've been a fan of theirs ever since Souvlaki came out. And I do have a copy of all. I do have all the records, you know, but this is the one record outside Souvlaki that I play a lot, and I never get tired of it. I think it's just brilliant how this band can actually get better even after they were gone for quite a while. So I really can't wait for the next album, and I interviewed one of them, and I think that they'll hit the studio soon. Hopefully it's in my bucket list to watch Slow Dive, and hopefully I'll get to see them in my lifetime. That's it for 10, but there's an honorable mention here, 2 actually. The Jew Lassenar from Ballet School. It's a multiracial band. I caught this band in Edinburgh several years ago, 2014. I caught them, and I just saw them by chance. I wasn't even there to watch them, but I was just blown away by their music. You could actually hear the influence of the Cocteau Twins in their music, but they're definitely not dream pop. There's a lot that they add to their music, and it's amazing what this 3-piece band can do. So I got the CD, and then I got the record along with their other 12-inch singles. It's just so sad that I'm not sure what happened to them. You'll not find any reason why they're no longer together. But soon after, it was over for this wonderful band, you know. So, but that doesn't stop me from listening to them. I did get to communicate with Rosie though, and one time she answered briefly online, and she spoke about depression, but that's about it, you know. The second honorable mention, Garden State soundtrack. that's why it's an exception, right? Because it's not a greatest hits thing, it's a soundtrack. Going back to that aforementioned Siren Music Festival at Coney Island, one of the booths there saw actor Zach Braff promoting Garden State, and I didn't know about it, to be honest with you, and I wasn't into the Shins yet. And there was this line, he was giving away free mixtapes or CDs, mixed CDs and homemade CDs of his favorite songs, and I remember it just wasn't the songs here, but there were even songs by The Cure. And I fell in line, and unfortunately, the last copy that he was able to give away was given to the guy right in front of me. So when I was at the front of the line, there was nothing left. So I didn't realize it was Zach Braff of Scrubs, and he did give me his director's hat that I actually gave to my girlfriend later on, and he did give me a copy of a magazine and all that. He signed stuff for me, but about a day or two later, I saw Garden State at AMC in Broadway, 42nd Street in Broadway, and then I was just so in love with the movie that also featured Natalie Portman. I had to go to back to Virgin to buy the soundtrack. It came out on CD, and the vinyl came out 10 years after its release, 2014. So I was able to secure this in 2014. Even if I had stopped buying vinyl in the 90s, I'd get one every now and then, like the reissue of Bob Marley's Legend, and that's another story that I'd like to tell later on. And so there, the 10 records, and the honorable mention too that I'll pack with me if I have to leave in a jiffy. So I hope, if you've not listened to any of them, I hope you give them a try. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy this video.